you've got, again, these hints that not everyone is in love with the Jedi. It's not like, at the end of Return of the Jedi when everyone's celebrating, yeah, the Jedi's back or whatever, and the Rebel Alliance won. So, these guys just don't trust them. So,
Oh, by the way, we shot your guy down. If anything, you can look at them and go, that's quite good business mind because they're very honest. They've kind of said, look, this is a situation. Do you want to take this, or are we going to have to deal with things a different way?
Palps is laughing in your face. He's like, what was the name again? Sifo Dias. Oh, right, okay. Fucking obvious, man. And even Yoda gets outside, and he's like, I should never mention this again, and walks off. You're like,
we can't just get rid of all these clones. They've helped us. And then it says, we're in the web of the Dark Lord. Our enemy created our army for us, and it's our only path. Now you see why Yoda went into exile, because you're like, oh my God. And the next 3 episodes are all about Yoda as well. And we are here for another episode of Clone Wars Conversations. That is why myself, Dave, and Maff go through each episode of the Clone Wars series. And we're getting near the end. We're not far. We're currently on Season 6, Part 3. So we're doing 3 episodes this week. That is Disappeared Part 1, Disappeared Part 2, and The Lost One. So there's a 2-parter and then an own individual episode. So we've got Jar Jar Binks and Mace Windu coming up, as well as The Mystery of Sifo Dias. Now, Maff has not seen all of the Clone Wars before. He's seen all the Star Wars Rebels, he's seen all the live action stuff, but he has not seen all of the Clone Wars or Bad Batch or the Tales Off stuff. And Dave has seen the Clone Wars before, but has not seen some of the Tales Off stuff. Whereas I have seen it all, including Star Wars Resistance, unfortunately. So mentioning that just in case people are wondering why we're not talking about future Clone Wars episodes, because we're not spoiling it for Maff. We're not there yet, but we're getting close. But yeah, we're going to delve really straight into these episodes, but I will say to any listeners, make sure you tune into the Skeleton Crew weekly discussion shows, which are, wherever you're listening to this, they are going to be showing there as well. So find those, different guests each week with a lot of perspectives. But let's delve right in. So let's go with Dave first. So Dave, Jar Jar Binks is your favourite character. As we all know, he's your favourite character in all of Star Wars. And we've got, this is, I believe, his last appearance in the Clone Wars, or at least in any sort of major role. So these 2 episodes, we'll kind of talk about the first episode more so, because they are a bit different, but we can bleed in between these 2. So what did you think of Jar Jar Binks and Mace Windu as a whole?
So I know I'm probably repeating myself from our previous episodes, but again, when you binge through a series, you just miss so much. And in my memory, again, from Series 5 Clone Wars onwards, everything is a home run. And then it's only when we're stop, pause, have a chat, stop, watch, stop, pause, have a chat. It's like, fucking hell, there's still a lot of shit in here as well, And it's like, we've just come off the back of some great episodes. And then this is such a lull. It belongs earlier in the season or earlier in the series, rather. Now, what I would say, I'm going to flip across to the other side, because I think I've spent plenty of minutes beating up Jar Jar. I feel like in this 2 episodes, he's actually toned down a little bit. He's not the wackiness isn't up to 11 like it often is. And so it's still kind of the character. But I think if it was this Jar Jar, it would have kind of been all right. He wouldn't irritate me quite as much as he does. So yeah, I found him tolerable in the first 2 episodes. And actually, even though, IMDb, it rates both these first 2 episodes that disappeared in the 6s, I thought they were okay. But again, in terms of the quality, because we've had such a high bar for so many episodes, it is just a dip in quality. But they were serviceable episodes. And then again, for episode 10, you felt the quality go back up again. You had a genuine good Clone Wars episode for that 3rd one.
Yeah, because, we've got, it's weird because the previous ones, as you said before, like I'm just looking at my notes from prior. So the last batch we did, Season 6, Part 2, they were the 3 sort of Clovis Padme episodes, and we were all quite surprised by them because we thought they weren't going to be very good. There was a couple of really brutal scenes, and then the part before that was the explaining the clones kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it is weird, yeah. But I completely forgot that Jar Jar popped up again. But Maff, you don't dislike Jar Jar as much. Your least favorite character seems to be 3PO. So what did you find about Jar Jar being in this episode so much and his pairing with Mace Windu?
I think what Dave says is right. I think also when he kind of meets the Queen, and obviously there's a bit of a thing between them, but it's like he's matured to a certain degree, and it feels like he's got to be on his best behavior because, like, he's been requested to come here, and if anything, it's May. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Mace anyway, but I mean, I was talking to my eldest this morning when we were working, and it's like the more you watch the Clone Wars, the more you see where the Jedi really messed up, and a big part of it is just the overconfidence and inability to see how things are actually planning out. It seems like we had a discussion about um, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon fighting Darth Maul. It's like, how could Darth take them both on? It's because, in my opinion, Darth Maul, when he trained and he learned, he had to be the best because otherwise he'd be killed.
Mm-hmm.
Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon is like, oh, yeah, we're playing with lightsabers.
Ceremoniously.
So, there's no danger there. It's a bit of practice. It's like, funny, Dave said this morning in VHS, it's like a Bushu master going in against a MMA kickboxer, and it's like, oh, yeah, okay, and just gets wiped the floor because he's used to being able to just kind of spar. He's not fighting for his life, so that's the difference. And that's the problem with the Jedi. They're just going through the motions. There's no one really. Dooku is kind of what they think is the big bad and Grievous. But there's nothing really that they come up against that they can't handle. Well, obviously there is because they do keep losing certain things, but it's their own downfall of not being able to see past that. And I think again that the bit in the first episode when Jar Jar and the Queen's speaking, and Mace is outside the door, and he's like, "You will let me pass." It's like the Jedi mind is to work, and he's just forcing himself in there. It's like, what are you doing? You're meant to be like a guest here, a servant to a certain degree. Shut up and just stay behind. You're making things worse. And that's the problem. They've got this self-sense of they're more important than anything else. And that's where you kind of, the more you watch these, you realize how much the Jedi just shot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, 100%.
It is, I do think that Jar Jar really does excel a lot more in this because he leads it. He's not the bumbling fool. Mace is the bumbling fool.
I mean, that's a very good perspective.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was there even from Phantom Menace. I mean, that interaction, that dialogue between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon about, the previous mission and the negotiations were short. They basically bullied their way, and that's what Mace is. He's just a bully. So people don't fall into line, then he bullies them into line. So, and Jar Jar is just a booty call ultimately here, isn't he?
He is.
It's like with the, I was just Alex was asking about it, says, have there been, who are the powerful Jedi? I said, well, Anakin was because he harvests both dark and light side. He was able, when Anakin got things done, he dipped into the dark side. And he was
a lot
able
of the time. Especially as the Clone Wars went on, it happened more and more.
Yeah. Whereas the Jedi, they don't, but they do, because when it suits them, it's like Cad Bane, when they wanted to get that information out of him, they brutally attacked his mind. And like, Anakin's like, what are you doing? Can't do that. And it's like, oh, yeah. We're allowed to now. And that's the problem. It's when they see fit, and that's their big downfall. Mace is very much like, if it don't go my way, like Dave says, I will bully my way through it.
And that's exactly why this kind of episode really showcases what happens in Revenge of the Sith. Because that throne room scene, every time I watch it, it gets better, to be honest. And it's just, when you watch all this Clone Wars stuff, and I'm so excited for you to watch Revenge of the Sith, Maff, because everything hits so different. And the fact you haven't seen it in so long, you'll be watching stuff, you'll be going, oh my God, this makes so much sense. And the thing is, I think Revenge of the Sith is my favourite Star Wars film. I think it's one of the best. But I do think the caveat is it only becomes really the best once you've got Clone Wars stuff. Because visually and action-wise and vibe and the dark stuff that happens in Revenge of the Sith is all incredible. It's just some of the plot points aren't fully developed. And it's because the Clone Wars fully develops those. So when you get the ultimate scene, the last scene with Mace Windu, when he is interacting with Palpatine and Anakin walks in on him, this exact thing you've spoken about, which is Palpatine has always been kind to Anakin and honest, never pushed him into anything. Mace has always been a dick to him. No, but this is from Anakin's perspective. No, but he does, and we'll talk about it when we watch the film. But from Anakin's perspective, Palpatine's never lied to him, whereas Mace has constantly said no to him, lied to him. There's certain scenes and certain dialogue that I'll point to when we watch Revenge of the Sith, where it's exactly the same at the start and the end of the film, which show like the true reflection of Anakin's mindset on turning.
It's like when Obi-Wan faked his own death.
Yes.
And all the Jedi Council knew about it, and they didn't tell Anakin. And then it kind of came out, and it's like, you fucking lied to him.
And in Revenge of the Sith, he says about the Council lying to him. And he's like, why can't the Council trust me? And you watch the Clone Wars and you go, I'm surprised you're still even trying. They've lied to you time and time again. And there's a really interesting bit of dialogue we'll get into in the Sifo Dias episode, which I do want to talk about. But back to Jar Jar. Back to Jar Jar getting laid. So, yeah, didn't realise in a kid's show you'd get Jar Jar making out with a duck-billed lady and then clearly banging the night away and Mace Windu going, oh, yeah, he's in her quarters. And he has been all night. And it's like, yeah, I didn't need that, thank you. I literally wrote, Jar Jar clearly has sex with Queenie. And Mace was like, what were you doing? He's like, I spent the night with her. And they just move on. It's like, okay. And she calls Jar Jar her love and things like that. I mean, I agree with what you guys say. I think Jar Jar's been calmed down a lot. I do think it's quite entertaining that they are talking about. I think it's quite entertaining that when the Queen asks for him specifically, like Senator Binks, and everyone's like, wait, what? Why do you want Senator Binks? And then you've got the kind of Force side of stuff, the Dargonian masters disappearing. But Maff, did you notice the planet is Bardota? Do you recognize that name? It's a very loose reference. Dave won't. So the comic I got you to read from the High Republic, The Blade, the character in that Porter Engle, he is nicknamed the Blade of Bardota because he did a 5-day siege of Bardota himself, I think it was, just without sleep, just went with his lightsaber against like whole armies. And so he's known, and this was 369 years prior, hence why they don't mention it. But I wonder if that connects to another reason why they sort of don't like the Jedi and etc. Because that's quite a deep cut.
He held them all off, didn't he? He held the army off.
Well, in the comic you saw, that wasn't on Bardota. That was a different planet. But he's known as... That character, Porter Engle, is known as the Blade of Bardota, but that's a fun one. But yeah, in this, it's in episode 1, you see them steal the Force from the baddies, and that kind of happens. The Queen gets kidnapped, and then we get onto the second episode, which I've written down as constant chase scenes, which felt a bit video gamey to me and a bit kind of dull. And then you get to the Mother Talzin bit. So before we get into Talzin, what did you guys think of anything else from the first episode, apart from Jar Jar getting laid? And then the first half of part 2, which for me, again, was just chase, stop, fight these enemies. Chase, stop, fight these enemies. What did you guys think? I'll come to you first, Maff. What did you think about those sort of parts?
My notes are kind of, as the end of the first episode is, the second episode starts. Chase, she gets taken. Jar Jar chases it. Mace does a bit of fighting. Chase it again. Mother Talzin turns up. It's like, it could have just been one episode, to be fair. They could have taken a few bits and bobs out and, just shortened it a little bit, and it would have been fine as one episode. It's like it's another one of those, we've got to fill, we've got to get an extra episode in it somewhere, so let's get Jar Jar getting laid. let's add a little bit more there. Maybe I don't know. It's funny because I've got one page and I've only just managed to kind of fill it with writing a bit bigger. And yet, the last episode, I've had to write really small to try to fit it on one page.
We're going to get there. That's why I'm loosely... Because there's a bit to talk about with Talzin, but I'm like, we're kind of... The Jar Jar stuff is like, we're kind of waiting because we're like, we want to get through the Jar Jar stuff and talk about the really cool stuff. But
I will say, I did like... They're doing it, I think they did it also in Ahsoka as well. When Mother Talzin's talks, there's that echoey voice that kind of comes with her. There's that dissonant whispers.
Well,
I love the way that they kind of do it. It's like, I don't know if we have discussed this before, but it's like the other Night Sisters are kind of chiming in as she talks, and there's like, ghosts of the past kind of coming through. You had me to read another comic and I stopped because it mentioned Mother Talzin, and I thought, oh, I don't know if she's going to come up against her, I better just hold on.
I'd forgotten that she was in this. I wouldn't have mentioned Son of Dathomir had I remembered she was in this very forgettable episode, but Son of Dathomir is definitely chronologically after this. Son of Dathomir is between season 6 and 7.
She's going to turn up in the next episode, isn't she?
What, as in the last 3 with Yoda?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to... If you think that, then, let's keep you thinking that. Let's keep going.
Okay. I thought she might have done, so I didn't want to kind of...
Well, I have got something fun to say about Talzin, but we'll get there in a sec. But Dave, was there anything else about episode 1 or the chase scenes or anything? And then if not, then we can move on to Talzin.
So again, I'm probably not as down on these first 2 episodes as you probably...
You've got the new Jar Jar fan club.
Probably steady. You guys probably came into this thinking I was going to be. I think 2 overriding thoughts with these 2 episodes. Again, parking the Jar Jar. And again, it seems weird, doesn't it? We're so used to seeing people abstain. And you're like, well, Jar Jar's a diplomat. Fuck it. Just he's not a Jedi. So yeah, good luck to him. I thought the episodes were basically taken from a Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. That's what it was based on. Same idea. But I really like the idea that you've got this race of people, and they don't trust the Jedi. And it was, you could see it as a bit of a plot contrivance to say, oh, we'll get Jar Jar involved in some way. But I think given where we've come from to get here, I thought it was quite poignant to have, this, they're not being like separatists. They're not kind of, being swayed. We've seen a lot of planets who are muscled into having to join the separatists and some trying to stay neutral. These are saying, no, we just don't trust the Jedi. So I thought that was the overriding sort of feeling I had. So, yeah, I do feel like because it did dip, in quality, it belongs in the earlier seasons. However, contextually, it probably does fit right here, where you've got, again, these hints that not everyone is in love with the Jedi. It's not like, at the end of Return of the Jedi, when everyone's celebrating, yeah, the Jedi's back and whatever, and the Rebel Alliance won. So, these guys just don't trust them. So, yeah, I thought they were okay, and I'd forgot the witch was in it as well. I do like that effect. I remember doing that years ago, and it's something you almost have to switch the vocal around. So the way we speak, and if you switch it around, it kind of leans into that audio. So it's a cool effect. But yeah, so it was okay. It's just, I'd say the episodes were above average. I'm just expecting that because it's so deep into season 6, I'm expecting everything to be a home run. But yeah, it's not quite there.
Do you think that the Jedi made a mistake as well by sending Mace? I know Mace kind of said, I'm going, but would you, surely Yoda could have probably said, you know what, you're probably not the right man for the job, whereas Obi-Wan is probably the right man for the job.
You know,
probably more
I honestly,
diplomatic.
I start to wonder if Yoda's got any fucking idea about what's going on. Like,
I mean,
we'll get on to the next episode.
Yeah, I was going to say I've got a lot to say about that. I mean, I think
So, yeah.
I think the Jedi unfortunately would go, well, Mace went and they succeeded, and the Queen was safe, and we beat Mother Talzin, so he was the right man for the job. We made the right decision.
And justify the means.
That's literally their answer every time. They're like, well, you know, the world didn't end, so we made the right decision. And when the world did end, none of them are around anymore, so they can't really apologize to, you know, two of them go to exile, you know, and the rest of them basically pretend they're not Jedi anymore. So I will say with these episodes, I agree. I don't think they're bad. I think they're okay. I'd say they're mid. I would probably say they're about average. I'd say if these were in the first 3 seasons, we'd probably be saying these are quite good. But I think, as Dave said, as we've had, I mean, season 5, even though it's the odd episode that's a bit weak, it's phenomenal, you know, I've just been editing them and releasing them with the Lawless, with the whole Mandalore Maul Satine stuff, and then the temple bombing arc. Oh, like god tier. And then you get the Clone Wars, the Clone 4-parter with 5s, and that again is phenomenal. And I just think, these two are a bit weak, and they are a bit out of place. And it feels like, because this season got cut, I think these episodes are quite odd because the next 3 episodes are really unique and different, and the last 3 episodes were really brutal and mature with Anakin, and the 4 episodes before that were all like contextualizing and explaining the inhibitor chips in Order 66. So it's like these 2 episodes. I think if a season was 20 episodes like the last one, it would be okay. These were just a nice little breather because it's intense. There's probably would be one other little weird droid C-3PO episode, I imagine, probably around episode like 16 or something. But because the season got cut short, I think they just kind of had this one. This was like, this isn't that hard necessary to make, maybe. You know, a lot of the baddies just all look the same. It's different enough to be unique and be worth the season, in air quotes. Get a final little bit of Jar Jar, final little bit of Mace, I guess. So, you know, I didn't mind them, but I will say with Talzin, the blade she uses is called Talzin's blade, and that is the blade in Ahsoka. Now, it's not exactly the same because it looks different, but it's called the same thing. It's still the blade of Talzin, and it's meant to be like the blade connected to like generations and generations of witches. So I like that effect with the green smoke and stuff, and that element of Ahsoka was one of the really cool parts of the Ahsoka series, which I appreciate. And then obviously the orb breaks, Talzin disappears. When's she coming back? Well, Maff knows, Son of Dathomir. That's the next time we get to see Mother Talzin, as well as Maul before we get into season 7. But is there anything else, Maff, you want to say about these 2 before we get into the big boy episode?
No.
Cool. So the big boy episode, it's called The Lost One. Now, I've got a little bit more stuff that I want to mention quickly before we delve right in. So, Sifo Dias. And then I'll give it on to you guys. I'm going to give you some facts, and then you guys can tell me what you thought about the episode. So we've got Sifo Dias. So most recently, he was mentioned in the John Jackson Miller book, The Living Force, which is a really fantastic book. I listened to the audiobook. Brilliant. It's about the 12 Jedi Order, the 12 of the Jedi Council going off on like a retreat kind of thing. And it's really funny. Coyote-Mundi orders plain slushed ice with no flavouring on it, and the guy doesn't even know what to charge him because he's like, no one's ever ordered no flavour before. And Coyote-Mundi's like, no, I'll just take shaved ice that's unflavoured and just eat that. And there's little funny things like that show about the Jedi Order, and Mace is in it and stuff. But Sifo Dias is mentioned in that. And they mention him in this episode where he got removed from the council. He got kicked off because his methods were too extreme. He gets mentioned in the Living Force because he has a problem with when he's recruiting. He was desperate to recruit people really, really quickly. And he often was recruiting people who were not actually Force attuned enough to really become a Jedi. And they were not succeeding in a lot of ways because he was so eager to build up an army. Now, it doesn't get explained a huge amount in this, so I'm going to give a little bit of gap filling because otherwise there's going to be, you guys are probably going to have a lot of questions, mainly Maff, but I'm going to loosely gap fill, which is in Dooku Jedi Lost, which is the audio drama by Cavan Scott, which is really good. Again, if people want to get like an Audible trial or something, go ahead and listen to that. It's cool. It's about Sifo Dias because he was basically Count Dooku's best friend, and they were Padawans together and they grew up. And what Sifo Dias suffered from is a very specific force vision affliction, where he would essentially get ridiculously intense force seizures, and he would have really crazy visions there. And he had a lot when he was younger, and they didn't even think they'd be able to train him properly because he would just be on a mission and just have a seizure. And they managed to help him kind of train and meditate and kind of get a control on them. But then he started to get really intense force visions about the downfall of the Jedi, which Plo Koon mentions in the Jedi Council meeting. He specifically says Order 66 is going to happen. He doesn't say the words Order 66, but he sees a great war that's being puppeted, that's going to destroy the Republic, and this was like decades prior. This is like before the Phantom Menace. This is like a few years before the Phantom Menace, I believe it was. And so he is like having these visions, and they're like, what? And this is like 15 years plus before the Clone Wars. They're like, what? That could never happen before Darth Maul ever pops up, anything like that. And he is having all these visions about different things. He then has a vision about a planet that's going to get destroyed, basically. The Jedi don't believe him. He forces people to go. He goes with Dooku when they're younger and drags Yoda along and 2 others. They go there, and a cataclysmic event occurs that him, Yoda, Dooku, they manage to just about evacuate most of the people, but still, I think thousands and thousands die. Loads of crops get destroyed, but the only reason the Jedi Order even eventually sent back up and even allowed Yoda to go is because the place was the place that made Bacta, which is the healing stuff. And it's very valuable to the Republic that if Sifo Dias just happens to be right about something, about this Bacta thing, it will really harm the Republic. So that's the only reason they even sent a little recon crew, and then escalated, and they should have listened to Sifo Dias in the beginning. And Dooku keeps pointing this out to the Jedi Order over and over again, and they do not listen to him. So that's why Dooku eventually leaves the Order, is because, and there's an animated thing we'll watch at some point in the future, which will go a little bit more into Dooku, but it is literally just his best friend kept having force seizures. They were going to abandon him. Dooku kept going up in the Order, and they would not listen to Sifo Dias or any of his visions because they were so content, and they thought nothing could ever defeat us, nothing could ever destroy us. So that is a bit of waterboarding for you guys, a bit of trivia about Sifo Dias, because it's only really in that audio drama and sprinkled elsewhere in the canon. So let's go to you first, Dave. What did you know? I mean, you've seen this episode before, but I honestly only remembered snippets of this, and I've seen this a couple times. What did you remember about this and Sifo Dias? Because he's only mentioned in Attack of the Clones really briefly, and is basically never mentioned again. So what did you know about him, if anything?
So didn't really remember the episode, but I think, I don't know, just by osmosis and watching Attack of the Clones a few times, Sifo Dias is one of those. I forget most of the Star Wars names, but that one, things like Salacious Crumb, there are certain names of these, lesser known characters that just stick in your brain quite well. I want to see more. I want to learn more about him. He sounds like an interesting character. Even before you told me all of that, or told us all of that, I left this episode. I was thinking, I kind of want to see more of that, and I want to see him and Dooku, and I want to see almost how they're quote unquote corrupted, or how they're turned against the Jedi, because. The big problem I had, watching this episode, and again, consistent with the others, where you're like, Yoda, fucking hell, mate. I used to look up to you, but like the fucking Palps is laughing in your face. He's like, what was the name again? Sifo Dias. Oh, right, okay. Fucking obvious, man. And even Yoda gets outside and he's like, I should never mention this again, and walks off. You're like, are you suspecting something or not? And I come to the conclusion, no, he's not. But also, it's like, oh yeah, Sifo Dias, you had to get rid of him from the council because he was creating a massive army, a massive clone army. What, you mean the one that you're using now? You're utilising exactly what he built, but you're booting him off the council. Yeah, but it's all right though, isn't it? It's like Mace a few episodes ago, where he's like, oh yeah, the Force willed it this way. Fuck off. It's just
the Ahsoka's trial
you literally,
thing.
You just booted him off the council for the very reason, and now you're taking advantage of that, and no one's acknowledging the hypocrisy of it all.
Keeping with the Yoda thing, let's also talk about, I'll come to you, Maff, when they literally say in this, and this is the thing which really shows how crap the Jedi are at this point, how they're just so trapped. And Yoda does encapsulate this. And he literally says, right, Yoda says to cover it up, as you said, Dave. And then he goes, he says, our greatest enemy created an army for us to fight them with. What is going on? What can we do? Well, the only option, the only path, the true path we must follow is the only path in front of us. Because when Obi-Wan thinks, is this the right path? Or even Mace might say it. And he's like, is this the right path? He's like, it's the only path. The only thing we can now do is just keep fighting. We can't just get rid of all these clones. They've helped us. And then it says, we're in the web of the Dark Lord. Our enemy created our army for us. And it's our only path. Now you see why Yoda went into exile. Because you're like, oh my God. And the next 3 episodes are all about Yoda as well.
In other words, it's just like, fuck it. Let's use them. They're there.
100%. So what do you find about all this, Maff? It's all new to you.
When he went into the throne room with the Emperor, and it, like you say, he mentioned, and the Emperor's just playing dumb, but then there's little bits where there's them smiles of like, haha, I've got you here. And like you said, Yoda comes out when they ask him how it went, it's like, it's just the same as normal with the Emperor. It's like, can you not see this guy is playing you? And it's just they don't want to see what's in front of them, and the Emperor's obviously worked this all out. He's got this plan. It's like, oh, it's the guy before me. It's nothing to do with me. So why didn't you go see him? Knowing full well that them ties should have been tied up. Everything there should have been dealt with, and obviously it hasn't. So then there is this, I think, is the next scene afterwards where he's speaking to Dooku.
I think it's pretty close after that, yeah.
That bit there, when Dooku's kind of talking with him, and you see Dooku's thinking, shit, I fucked up it, but it's fine. And then you realise how powerful the Emperor is. Over a hologram, starts force choking him, and it's like, oh shit.
And Dooku, of all people, as well.
Yeah, who's like super powerful as well. It's just, normally, they've got to, because when Dooku, skipping forward a bit, when Dooku kills someone later on, and that he sees him to be able to do it. Whereas the Emperor's just like, it don't matter where you are, I can just do it. And that's the point of it. To be fair, there's a little part with it kind of, and I know this is kind of wrong, but there's a little part of it is maybe the Emperor was right. Maybe what he was kind of going for might have actually been better than what the shit the Jedi do, because they don't seem to know what they're doing. It's like we've been given an army by our enemy. What should we do? Probably it might be an idea to kind of disband it and maybe, look about building up or
investigate.
Even actually thinking about this, didn't we just deal with like inhibitor chips? Could we not put 2 and 2 together and think maybe that could link with the enemy's, plan here? But no. Let's just keep using them instead of just let's disband them. Let's start a new army, maybe do something along that lines. But,
well, let's keep using them, and let's also cover it up and not tell anyone. And you're like,
have you not learned? Have you not learned that? Part of the Jedi, they're meant to be holier than thou. So surely part of that is not fucking lying, not hiding things, being front and center about stuff. Even if they kind of came forward and say, look, we've just come to, find out this information that the clones was actually given to us by someone else, and we're now having to decide the best course going forward, and that, or at least maybe stop the clone army getting, because they're still kind of creating clones.
Yeah.
Maybe even just go, right, okay, we don't abandon them, but we stop, manufacturing them and kind of bring on a new army to take over. Nah, fuck it, let's just keep going and see what happens, and we'll play it by ear. It'll be fine.
I wonder what's the worst that could happen. Exactly. And what is the worst? Well, we'll find out in Revenge of the Sith.
what you just mentioned about Sifo Dias having a vision of a planet exploding, my first thought was Alderaan.
Well,
Is that what he saw?
No, he saw. So it happened. It wasn't quite exploding. I think what happens is like a meteor's going to hit it or something, and it's just some big thing. He doesn't. He doesn't know exactly what's going to happen. He just sees like fire and visions and stuff like that, and it's not the first time he envisioned something and something came right. And so Dooku's really pushing the council to go. It's part like the book itself is interesting because it takes place. It's the perspective of Asajj Ventress, and she's reading through old like diaries and data files and information about Dooku that's basically been lost, or that he's like destroyed or hidden away. All about Sifo Dias. And so it's her trying to go through Dooku's stuff to try and... It's at the point where she's kind of like unsure where she stands with him as like the assassin when she's kind of failed him a couple of times.
A question there then with Dooku. At the point when he kind of goes with Sifo Dias to make the clone army, is he under the Emperor at that point, or is he still part of the Jedi Order?
Yeah, the timeline is a little bit odd. So I believe that around the time of Phantom Menace, like before the Phantom Menace, around that kind of time, that's when Dooku essentially, he left the Order, and I think what happened is he was kind of interacting a little bit with the Dark Lord, but he wasn't aligning himself with it. Then he kind of leaves the Order to kind of figure himself out. He becomes the Count of Sereno, and that's also in Dooku Jedi Lost. It's not just about him and Sifo Dias. It literally goes through his whole life, him literally leaving the Order, him living as like a Count of Sereno, because that's kind of what Asajj is researching, because that's why he's called Count Dooku, because he actually comes from like a really wealthy family. And when he's a teenager, he goes back there, and he's like, the Jedi just took me away without asking, and his like family's life has fallen apart. I think his sister's being abused or something. And so, sorry? Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that kind of happens, and then he goes back there, and it all kind of unfolds from there as well. So there's a lot to him. Like, he interacts with the Emperor with Palpatine a couple of times. Then I think what essentially happens, he gets into a situation where I think Palpatine is basically like, look, I'm either going to kill you or you can just kind of join me. It's your call. You want this. You can see what's wrong with the Jedi. And then there's an animated thing I'll show you guys. I think after we watch Revenge of the Sith, there's 2 mini animated collections we'll watch. Then we can watch the rest of the films, and then we'll go on to Bad Batch. But those 2 animated films really heavily link with... Like, one of them is specifically about Dooku. It's basically everything you see about Dooku before the Clone Wars. I think, Dave, you've seen that one, haven't you?
So, Dooku's his actual name.
Sorry?
Tyranus. Sorry, Dooku's his actual name. Tyranus was just like a
Darth.
alias.
It's Darth. Darth Tyrannus, Darth Sidious, Darth Vader. It's just...
Right, so that was like the... kind of the dark side version of him, so to speak. But everyone knows him as Dooku. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's how he gets away with it.
Revealed in this.
Yes.
Like when they go Tyrannus, and they're like, you're Tyrannus? Oh, yeah, because you
orchestrated the growing of our clone army. Yeah. Oh, well, it's just interesting. But yeah, is there anything else you want to mention about this in particular, Dave, with what we've just spoken about, actually, with Diaz and Dooku?
Yeah, so what I felt was, again, Dooku's quite ominous, and we've seen him multiple times now fight Anakin and Obi-Wan. But when Dooku is escaping on the spacecraft, and then Obi-Wan's like, I'll give you a lift. It's like, why don't you fucking get over there and fight him? You're the senior person here. You should be the one trying to, send me over, but he just flings Anakin over.
If you was wanting to win a fight, who would you pick? Anakin? Or if you don't want to lose, Obi-Wan, he's defensive. Anakin, if he goes full tilt, could probably take Dooku.
Also, Obi-Wan does get beaten by Dooku more frequently than Anakin does. Each time we see Anakin fight Dooku, he gets closer and closer to beating him. But Obi-Wan just about survives.
I think Obi-Wan knows that if there's a chance of beating him, Anakin's got a better chance than what he has. So it makes sense. But it's like Dooku's fighting style. He's like an old fencer. He's just hand behind the eye. I mean, you couldn't really do it on film. I know that they kind of do it with Christopher, but the way that he moves is just, it's like ballet. And he's just, he's a step ahead of of both of them. Anakin does have enough hand at certain points, and again, I think that's a fighting style where Obi-Wan is a bit more kind of he's waiting for an attack to then parry back to then try riposting and get him, whereas Anakin's like, I'll just fucking do you.
No.
Fucking let's have it. So I get what you're saying. I just think, he's still the master and Anakin's the
Knight.
Yeah, so I just think seniority should have gone for it. I just thought it was odd. And maybe with a line of dialogue, he could have said, Anakin, you got a better chance. I'll give you a lift or something like that. I just thought it was odd to throw your junior at this murderous killer.
Yeah, I think by this point, though, I think Anakin's he's like a General Skywalker, so technically in the war they're equal, even though you are right, Master to a Jedi Knight. But also I think it's been we're nearing the end of the Clone Wars now, so I think this is either just at the edge of 20 years before the Battle of Yavin, but I think it might even be 19 years before the Battle of Yavin. I'll double check, because that's the year that Revenge of the Sith happens. And when we get into season 7, there are some as soon as you watch the first episode, you're like, oh yeah, this is literally like very close to Revenge of the Sith, especially certain bits. But yeah, it's one of those, I think, just as a whole, this episode, I think this episode's fantastic. It's quite highly rated. I wish this was a two-parter, and we got to actually, like, all the stuff from Dooku Jedi Lost, I think it's cool, but like, I still to this day, even though I've listened to the audiobook, I've watched this episode numerous times, I've read all the Dooku comics, I've read Master and Apprentice, which is about Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, like a decade before Phantom Menace, and you get flashbacks of Qui-Gon's time with Dooku as an apprentice, and you can see Dooku getting a more and more dark side, and then in one of the things, the future animated shorts, we get to see a little bit of that, but it's just, there's not enough. I'm like, Dave, I want more Sifo Dias. Sorry, Maff.
I think if they did the previous two episodes not put into one, split this into two, and what they could have done is do like a flashback of Sifo Dias and Dooku talking, and it's like even say like, I've had these visions, kind of give a bit more of a backstory, and then a reason why they've gone to kind of Chimera to get the clothes made. It would elevate this. I mean, it's fantastic as it is, but it would elevate it even more if you just gave that, you just in like a few minutes kind of give us a bit of backstory, and it makes you see things even better. If they'd have added that in here and just gone, oh, there's a flashback here of Dooku going with Sifo Dias, which we know this anyway, we've already worked this out, not stupid. If you see that on screen, you then start thinking, you know what, I get what they were doing. I understand that. And to be fair, maybe a little bit of, you could feel for Dooku a little bit. Like you said, Dooku will probably put in a situation which the Emperor's done a few times. He does it with Maul. And it's like, if your choices are, you serve me or you die. Which do you want to do? Well, you know what, I like actually being alive, so
yeah, I don't like death much.
The rest of it.
Well, it's. Sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you were asking me about the animated thing that I'd seen. I can't actually remember what it was that we watched, but there was something that I watched where I thought, oh, Dooku he's not just this mustache twirling villain.
It was that.
He had a fair point there.
He does. That's the thing. And so, because there's basically, when we finish Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith, there's Tales of the Empire and Tales of the Jedi. And each of them is 6 episodes, and it's 3 episodes about one character and 3 episodes about another. So there's 4 characters in total being spoken about, and they all connect in some way to the Clone Wars. They either start before and end during the Clone Wars. They start the Clone Wars and go beyond. So they're the 4 kind of stories that go on there of varying things, but we don't even look them up until you finish the Clone Wars, because they are horrendously spoilery. But yeah, that'll probably be the last time you guys get much about Dooku, unless you check out Dooku Jedi Lost, which is good. But it's one of those where, again, Sifo Dias stuff, there's just not enough of it. I want a lot more like pre-Clone Wars era stuff. I want like a Dooku book or things. That's why a lot of people like Darth Plagueis, the Legends book, because it's all about Palpatine's rise to power up to like the night of him killing his master, which is just before he goes to Naboo and at the end of Phantom Menace and does the celebration-y thing. Like, it connects really well. So are we going to say something then, Dave?
Yeah, I'd watch a movie or certainly a few episodes, Clone Wars like, of Sifo Dias and Dooku. And you can imagine if you followed them through as the protagonist, I reckon a good storyteller could make a good case for helping you understand. Oh yeah, well this all sort of makes sense, and they're being proactive. Especially if he's got these force visions, he can see what's happening. And that's one of the most frustrating things. You must have it in work situations and just general life. You're saying this is the thing that will happen, and it's like, oh no, it'll be fine. And then it happens, and you're like, I literally said this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's so frustrating. So you could definitely see how, someone could be driven that way. So I think if they'd have had a flashback with Sifo Diaz, they'd have to design the character. They'd have to put quite a lot of effort into what's ultimately going to be a flashback scene. So that's why I think, they haven't done any flashbacks. But definitely, if there's more Sifo Diaz and exploring him as a character, I'm here for it.
Yeah, I think I imagine the reason they didn't do it is because I think what they should have done is done this episode, and then the next episode should have been the flashback, and it kind of explains everything, and it kind of shows Dooku. But I imagine the reason they didn't do it is because trying to make a young Dooku is the main thing, because they already made the body model for Sifo Diaz kind of because you saw him in the hologram. But I think trying to make Dooku look young, because I think that it's really weird because Clone Wars, the animation's really good. Apart from Dooku just looks so weird. You get used to it now, but like when you see him, he's got like the really long beard, and when you see Sir Christopher Lee, his beard is shorter than mine is now. But Dooku's is like down to like his like sternum almost. And so I think that if they tweak him to younger, it would look odd maybe, but I think it's probably quite a bit of work. And again, when it was like, we're cutting Clone Wars, you need to stop now, they probably were we have to do the Sifo Diaz story to some degree, but we don't have time to make a young Dooku thing and blah, blah, blah. Maybe. That's what I would kind of guess. Is there anything else you guys want to say about this episode? I mean, there's the Silman gone mad, which is you kind of touched on that with Dooku killing him. He had to kind of look at him to kill him, but that was really dark. Like this really, like he's been trapped there for what? It was like over 10 years. I think it was like 13 years or something. And he's stuck there, befriended roaches and things, and didn't even want to leave. He was just gone absolutely bananas and then killed by Dooku.
But again, another point where you see him getting lifted up and start getting choked. And like Anakin and Obi-Wan were like, oh, what's going on? Come on, guys. Look behind you. Look at the door. I'm sure they could have done something to stop it. It's like they're so slow to react. I mean, Anakin, would have thought he would have reacted a lot quicker.
Yeah.
But they just seem a bit kind of, oh, you're getting choked.
Or even felt the force.
Are you doing that? No, I'm not doing that. Who's doing that? Oh, Dooku's behind us.
Well, as Dave said, you probably feel him. You can see, Jedi was going, oh yeah, I can sense your feelings. I can sense this. I can sense how powerful you are. But Dooku seems to always be able to sneak up on people. And again, in Legends, it's mentioned that the Sith learn to hide their force powers so they can kind of be like Palpatine. How did he be in front of the Jedi all the time? Well, because he can hide his force powers. But they never say it in Clone Wars. In no canon content do they really address it. And you're just like, that would if they just, in this episode, or if they're the two-parter, and they just had a bit where Dooku and young Sifo Diaz, and Sifo Diaz goes, I can't sense you. And Dooku goes, oh yeah, I've been learning things. And he goes, I thought the Jedi forbade you from being able to hide your force ability. And he's like, and he says like a line like Palpatine, like the Jedi say a lot of powers are forbidden. Like that would have been really clever. And then that would have basically been like, any time Dooku sneaks up on anyone, you've explained it.
But even when Dooku came in, it just comes in, he's taking names of all the guards. Surely explosions, gunshots, things like that, the Jedi would have heard that. No?
Felt the vibrations even.
Yeah, it's like, it just seems to be what kind of fits at the time, I get that. But again, it doesn't show the Jedi in very good light. It shows, again, the incompetence of being able to do things. But I do like the fact briefly mention the Pikes. We see the Pikes.
I was going to ask you about that because of Star Wars Outlaws and obviously Book of Boba Fett, we saw him and things like that. And I've not played a huge amount of Outlaws yet. I'm still on the first planet, but I've been interacting with the Pikes quite a bit, like Gorman and stuff. So how did you find that, like with your connection to... you probably know more about the Pikes than I do, actually, because you've seen, aside from this episode, which you've now seen, you've actually seen more Pike stuff than I have because you've played Outlaws.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say too much, but the Pikes are quite... they're interesting to see who has power and that. But it was good to see them. But again, they've obviously, when they kind of said, yeah, we paid us good money, so we went and shot them down. But we recovered something and we just didn't tell them about it and that. And it's like, we kept this as insurance. It's like, that's quite smart. Like, if a guy comes and pays you a lot of money and you probably realize that he's a Jedi as well, that it's probably a good idea to have, or maybe not a Jedi, something else. It's probably a good idea to have a bit of an insurance thing because then you don't just come in and wipe you out and you're just a loose end that you could tie up as well. So, I mean, unfortunately, at the point when they kind of find, is it Silman?
Yeah.
It's crazy, but having said that, he's been there 13 years, I think it'd be. Which
is a horrendous amount of time. Could you imagine that room and being just kept as insurance, never knowing if you're going to be picked up, assumed dead as well, and you're just an aide to Valorum. But I agree. I like the Pikes in this that you get to see a bit more depth and they're not just we're evil criminals who kill everyone. They're actually really reasonable. He's actually like, oh, I know you're the Jedi here. Like, we thought we'd get blamed for something like this. Yes, we shot, as you said, Maff. Yeah, we shot one of yours down. We got paid a lot for it. It was 13 years ago, and we saved someone who means something to you. Do you want him back? And we're happy to forgive all this. No attacking. And I was like, that's really, I really like that. It's
good negotiation.
Well, it's not nice. It's not dissimilar, actually. I found a little bit to the Tusken Raiders in Book of Boba Fett, where they're portrayed as these savages and these kind of things. And you go, actually, no, they have a lot more to them. And I felt that. I don't know if you, Dave, if you felt that with the Pikes, because you don't have that connection through Outlaws. I don't know if they meant anything to you in this.
I'd seen them before.
Yeah, they're in the Clone Wars and stuff. Yeah,
yeah, they always remind me of the things out of the Transformers movie, the heads that sort of change. Silman, though, he just reminds me of the prisoner in Life of Brian. He turns up, he's like, spit in the face. Oh, I long for a spit in the face. When he started acting all crazy and stuff, I just couldn't help but make the parallel with him. But yeah, definitely with the Pikes, I felt like they were three-dimensional, like you say. It wasn't like they were just being the stereotypical villain. And actually, when the guy gets killed, I'm like, oh, he didn't deserve that. So I actually felt something for him, and it was a bit gutted that he got killed off there.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add about the Pikes there, Maff? Or anything else?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just like we've just kind of said that they are kind of like you haven't known about him for 13 years, but we've got him here, and we're willing to broker a deal, and that. So it's like, you scratch our back, we'll scratch yours. You take her away. You just, don't come at us. But to be fair, you didn't know there'd been a crowd committed anyway, so.
Yeah, we're not going to make a noise about it. We're not going to point out to you that we killed one of your own,
Yeah. Oh, by the way, we shot your guy down. But the thing is, if anything, you can look at them and go, that's quite good business mind because they're very honest. They've kind of said, look, this is a situation. Do you want to take this or, are we going to have to deal with things a different way? And I did like that. It's not like the Hook cartel where sometimes you just see it and it's like, oh, just send a load of thugs in to shoot up. They have a bit more kind of, well, actually, let's make a deal. Let's broker a deal so that it benefits both of us. Win-win situation.
Yeah, I mean, Crimson Dawn are a lot like that. I mean, I know you've played Outlaws and they're on that quite a bit, but like Crimson Dawn, especially in the comics, which are set, I think, before the events of Outlaws, if I remember correctly, and you get to see like the whole thing they do to the galaxy and the way they play all the criminals and the Hutts and Vader all against each other, and that eventually as we get along, there will be more comic homework that I get you guys to do. But I think you specifically, Maff, because you quite like that element, the Crimson Dawn, those kind of things. They're a real major part of the comics, which I really like. But last thing,
I mean,
go ahead.
Outlaws isn't the great. He's not as good as Survivor or
No,
Last
no, definitely not.
Not Last Jedi.
Fallen Order.
Fallen Order.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting way of seeing how things are run.
Yes.
And that you can kind of see how like Han Solo would be, playing the other cartel and seeing all and dealing with the other cartel and trying to do jobs. And there's several missions where it's like, shit, I need to go do a mission for them, so I'm gonna have to go do some bounties for them, some jobs, so that I can actually go and talk to them and see them all being playing off against each other. And we're briefly seeing little bits in here. I would have loved to have seen a bit more of the underworld.
Well, I will say the teaser is, so we're getting nearer to Bad Batch. And when we get there, you get to see a group of people, and one of the things people really like about it is they are morally good, but they are trying to find their way in the universe, and they have to do certain jobs to make certain people happy. And I think that Outlaws, although Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order are top tier games, and Outlaws is just pretty good. It's fun. It's good that it's Star Wars. If it wasn't Star Warsy and it was just like a non-Star Wars thing, it wouldn't have half the charm. But the thing is with it, I find that being in the trenches and not being above everyone like the Jedi are, like in the game Outlaws, as limited I've played, it's literally like, oh, my gun needs to be better. I need my booster on my speeder to do that mission. Well, to do that, I need money. Well, actually, I haven't got very much money, so I need to do a job for these guys. But to do that, I need to, and it becomes this like chain, and that's kind of what, as you said, Maff, that's what Han Solo finds him in. But the Jedi don't have that. So as soon as any like thugs or crime syndicates see the Jedi, they're like, okay, how are you going to ruin my day? Whereas seeing it in Outlaws or seeing it from certain comics and things, there's a comic series called Bounty Hunters that's really good, and it delves into the reputations of all the criminal underworld and how they all interact. So that was a part of this episode. I remember the Pikes being in it, but I forgot they would actually put quite a stamp on me, I'd say. But I think we've pretty much spoken about everything. So I'll give it back to each of you for one last sort of thing we can say about this wrap up, and then I'll do the preview for next episode and we can end this call. So, Dave, anything else about these 3 episodes we have not yet touched upon that you want to mention?
No, just feel like the 3 they finished off really strong with the end there, and even though it built up my frustrations again with Yoda and the Jedi in general, that they're so asleep at the wheel. But no, I'm kind of, although I've really enjoyed the way we've done it as well to step through, I am also sort of chomping at the bit to, do this last 3 now, and then it's one season, it's a short season again to go. So
you can do it in 3 parts.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of those conflict things. I love the way we're doing it, but I also am like, right, I'm itching to get onto the next 3
Maff
now.
has no idea, and it's like I literally keep saying to Megan, I'm like, I'm so excited, but I can't even hint at why. I can't even talk about anything. I gave Maff one hint, and that's all he knows about the final season, really. So I'm excited, and the next 3 are going to be interesting. I will say sorry that that Chancellor Valorum pops up in the 3rd episode, and he's actually the character from Phantom Menace who's in power before Palps takes over.
General Zod.
Yes. I think
so. Yeah. And I looked at the IMDb page. Terrence Stamp isn't on there, so I don't know who's done the voice.
No, it's not Terrence Stamp. It looks just like Terrence Stamp. I actually got confused. I think it's not Malcolm No, is it Terrence Stamp? Oh, I'm getting them confused now because I remember. No, I think you're right. It is Terrence Stamp. No, you're 100% right. I was getting confused with Malcolm McDowell, who was in Clockwork Orange and things like that, even though they're not really like each other at all. But I do get those 2 people confused. I'm just going on his IMDb to 1999. Stars of Phantom Menace, Chancellor Valorum. So yeah, he is on there. I just think there's so many actors in Star Wars, it's like impossible to find them when you're scrolling. Yeah. So yes, he is in there. So he was in this episode as well, which I was like, oh yeah, that guy. All right. I mean, he's in Legends books a bit, and he's in some other books a little bit in comics, but he's pretty a non-character, isn't he? Maff, anything else you want to say about these 3 episodes?
No, I mean, I didn't expect too much from them, but as I said, the first 2 episodes, it was fine. It was all right. This one again is another one of those that will stick with you. So much happened. It seemed very kind. I think I've said to you before on Discord that I saved Skeleton Crew to watch after watching these because I thought, do I need a bit of a pick me up after these? And I mean, we talked off air about Skeleton Crew, but this, especially the last one, was top tier. It's not quite, one of the ones that's like I can't even talk now, but it's not as good as some of the other ones. Some of the really top tier ones, but it fills in a lot of holes and a lot of questions that I did. It's like I knew of Sifo Dias, didn't really know much about him. There's still more that I'd like to know.
Me too.
But at least it kind of fills in a bit of it and a bit of what Dooku is and that. And it now leads to that question of Yoda, why? Well, why not just come clean about some or have a plan? You're meant to be the fearless leader, and there's a big bunch of you just sat around in chairs, not really doing anything. And that.
No, it's completely.
I've enjoyed them.
Yeah, it is good, and Yoda is getting worse, unfortunately. And it is, as Dooku says in Dooku Jedi Lost, he blames Yoda. He says Yoda is complacent. He doesn't realize what's happening beneath him because he's been in power for so long. He's been in power for I think they're going to retcon what he says in Return of the Jedi, that he's been, training Jedi for, I think he says 800 years or something. And it's the age doesn't really line up. But assuming he's been training Jedi even for 600 years, you think how long that is. Humans, wouldn't even get up to the age of Master until they're in their 30s normally. So you think you've probably only got about 40 or 50 good years of being a Master, let alone the Great Jedi Council and all that jazz. So, but the next 3 episodes are all about Yoda.
He's maybe not that bothered because to him they come and go very quickly. If he's living for so long, it's Anakin, he could be fine, but he's only going to be here for couple, I suppose to him, a couple of months. Whereas, to us, that's many years.
Yeah.
But because he lives so long, it's not as if. I know Yoda's a big part of the next 3 episodes.
Yes, he's a big part of the
I do
family.
wonder, does that tie off with kind of what's happened here? And that, that's kind of.
Yes,
I'm not asking you to tell me.
No. I'll give you the hint. I'll give you and the listeners if you're watching along and you haven't watched the Clone Wars. So the next 3 episodes are. I remember loving them. The finale is actually higher rated than the finale of the Clone arc of this season, which I was surprised by because I remember the Clone arc, me enjoying it more personally, but I love 5s. The next 3, I don't know how Dave's going to feel because they are very weird. They're very Mortis Gods-like. And the writer of this episode, the Lost one, is Christian Taylor. He also wrote the Mortis Gods episodes, as well as the next few episodes, the finale 3. He wrote some other ones as well, but he wrote the next. In fact, he wrote the Clovis ones. So he wrote the Clovis episodes, the Lost One episode with Sifo Dias, and the last 3, and the Mortis Gods episodes. So, and the Lux Bonteri Death Watch one. Yeah, so
Mortis Gods ones. I think
that kind of idea. It's Lucasy in a way, like midichlorian-y stuff. It's not quite that, but it goes more into some peculiar concepts that isn't really mentioned elsewhere. I really like them, and there is a good Force vision, but I think by the end of it, it will be interesting to see what questions you both have and which ones I can actually answer, because I think there's a few. But that is really where we're going to go from here. So friends, anyone who's listening, next episode is going to be the 3 final episodes of season 6. These are episodes 11, 12, and 13, all about Yoda. And it starts off with him hearing a mysterious voice. And so you get to see his journey. We're going to finish series 6, and that by the time that comes out, I think that'll be end of December, maybe early January. And then we're going to do a little bit of homework. We're going to have one bonus episode, special one, which is about the Son of Dathomir comic. And then we're going to get into season 7, which is going to be 3 big old arcs of varying quality, but we'll get there. And then after that, the world's our oyster. This should be coming out, I'm thinking, early Jan, but basically I'm doing Skeleton Crew. That will be out around this time of coming out because we're in Clone Wars Christmas still, releasing an episode every week in December and a little bit beyond, so you can catch up. Also, I've got an interview tomorrow with a Star Wars author. Which, that's very exciting stuff. I won't say his name on air, just in case something happens, but I'll tell Maff after to be nice. Dave already knows. And so, yeah, it's really exciting stuff. And also, Maff has been on 20th Century Geek with talking about Conan. I've been on Spider-Man the Secret Bores talking about Spencer and small cast movies. I showed up on the VHS Strikes Back we're talking about Dragon Slayer very briefly. I also appeared on Back to the Filmography talking about Glory Days. And there's loads of stuff I've got going on in the description. So that's all the waffle from me. Follow me at Genuine Chit-Chat, all that jazz. So Dave, quick pass to you for plugs, and then we'll give it to Maff and wrap this up.
So, plugs, you've just mentioned about Dragon Slayer. That's coming out this week as we record. Probably already be out. And you guys both know, so I'm not spoiling anything. But the movie after that will be Run Lola Run, which at the time I hadn't watched at all. CD Reality Cast. So we've just finished I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. So that's just finished. So before this recording, we've just finished that one, and in the new year we'll be reviewing Traitors, so season 3 of Traitors, which is good fun.
Amazing stuff. And Maff, up to anything exciting, anything you can tease us with? Fret not.
I don't know, actually. I think I'll be doing a Skeleton Crew review at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's anything else.
Well, this is your full-time job now. You're the co-host of Clone Wars Conversations. The monthly released podcast that we record almost weekly now. So that's why I have to batch release so many episodes, because we just can't wait to watch more. But if by the time
Christmas off.
Yes, well, that's it. Christmas, we get a little bit of time off, but that's when you guys do your homework for. That'll be when you guys have to read Son of Dathomir, and you can watch the first 4 episodes of season 7. Which is good fun. And they don't really end on a cliffhanger, so they kind of are their own little thing. So you can watch them without chomping at the bit for the rest of them. But yeah, you can find all us on social media. Make sure you check out the description for all that usual jazz. This will probably be out in January, but we will see. But friends, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching along. Thank you for telling us your comments. It's always fun hearing from you. Tell us about Clone Wars. Tell us, share on social media, all that great stuff. But friends, as always, may the Force be with you. You were muted, Dave, when you did that.
I'm with you.
I was doing my Bane.
Always.
Keeping that in.
You have just experienced host, creator, everything elser of Genuine Chit-Chat, and also the host and creator of Star Wars Comics and Canon, found on the Comics in Motion podcast, Mike Burton.